This is Nathan Young from More Leads Online. I'm back with the Home Service Leaders podcast. And today I'm talking to Al Levi, who is the author of the 7 Power Contractor. Al, I can't possibly give you a better introduction than you can give yourself. Can you tell me more about yourself and your career and what led you to write the 7 Power Contractor?
I want to tell you that everybody who listens to Nathan, he kind of hears instructions because I told him my name is Al Levy. So we're already off and running. I love this show.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, not a problem.
I'm in trouble minute one.
Minute one. It's like, I didn't set my watch, but you trip right over it. Hey, so, the basics of it is I was born into a family business. I was third generation. It was started out of my grandfather's gas station in 1936. My dad and uncle returned from the war, went to work, moved us into fuel oil. And for fuel oil heating, for those who don't live in the Northeast, just think of like propane. And that was basically, the business that we were in. My brothers and I, by the time we were 8, were, being helpers, cleaning baskets, sweeping up. It's the nature of a family business, third generation. And then, we got to graduate to driving our own trucks. And, whenever I was not in school, and so even when I was in college, 6 months a year, I was driving a truck. And as I always like to say, my dad's idea of a spring break was that I got to drive a different truck. That was my spring break. So I was really immersed in it. And it was, wild and crazy days. We were in New York City, Long Island. And if you know where JFK Airport, just go south towards the water. That's us. And so that was our business. And worked with my 2 older brothers and my dad. I have to tell you, I was very lucky. I had, and it was going to sound corny, but I really had the best partners in the world. And even saying that, at any given day, I used to like to say there were either not enough Levies or too many. And either one of them was a problem. We had grown to about 8 people. And, basically what it was every day was like the first day we were in business after all of this time already. And we're putting out the same fires we put out yesterday that are breaking out again today. And in the back of our mind, we know they're going to break out tomorrow. And we're just really busy running around being firefighters. My dad's mantra, we had a very small office where the 4 of us would sit. And the reason was because my dad told us as young men, he says, we don't make any money with the 4 of you sitting in here, so go out and do something. And that was kind of like, the mantra, if you will. And so, as time went by, I realized, I guess, it was around the 1990s, that we needed to take control of our business. And just because, and my tagline is less stress, more success. Well, that's not by accident. I was making a ton of money, and that's a nice thing. But I also realized the stress was going to put me in an early grave. So I'd be a really rich, dead guy. Not a great goal, not interested. And so we changed, it became systematic. And there's a whole series of things that we'll unpack together. But for this podcast, one of the things before you go, hey, wait a second, I was coming to a marketing podcast. What is this guy talking about? Stop for a second, catch your breath, because Nathan and I will fill in. What I shared with him in our pre-call was, I was great at sales and marketing. And my team was excellent at blowing up every one of my opportunities. So that's why I became so good at operations and staffing.
Oh my gosh. So I couldn't have asked for a better intro, right? Like, that sounds incredible. And I can track with that. Like, I grew up in the family business. What you said about like driving a different truck, I feel that, I was doing furniture and appliance deliveries when I was like 15 years old. And, so I know what you're saying. I also think the desk thing is hilarious. My dad kept giving me a smaller and smaller desk, right? He's like, we got to make you, and he would never give me a desk in the back office. So he had a little couch back there where he would like take naps and stuff. And it was like known, like that's off limits. Like, no, you can't get comfortable because you're working. It's just like hearing you talk about, I'm like, oh, okay. Apparently our dads were friends. Like,
yeah, no question about it. I mean, I think that's, anybody who's grown up in a family business identified immediately with what I'm talking about.
Oh,
And I was pretty
man.
lucky, I mean, I think of, my dad, he was really one of the best mentors, and everybody, thinks that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My brothers and I have similar core values, but we are quite different.
Hmm.
And we were actually groomed. My dad was pretty secretive about it, but we were groomed for different positions. Marty was the smart financial guy, ran the office. Richie had the hands of golden. He was anything mechanical could do. And I was the bridge between the two. Both outside, could work in the field and do the inside stuff. And I was also kind of, the innovator, the guy who looks ahead. It takes somebody to have some vision. Otherwise, you're always just doing the same thing until you hit a wall and you don't know why. And so it came around the 90s about these systems. And basically, I walked into my office, that small office that I described, and I looked at my brothers and my dad, and I said, I woke up this morning and was sweating. And I said, here's why. I said, I feel like I'm a hostage at my own company. And I'm betting that the three of you feel the same way. And they looked at me and they go, yeah, we do. What are you going to do about it? I said, I don't know, but I'm really good at this stuff. So just give me a little bit of time. And I knew instantly because I had read the great book, Michael Gerber's E-Myth.
Yes.
And I finally understood. The thing about Michael Gerber's book, I would say the big things I took away was that if you're always working in the business and never on it, nothing much is going to change. And that was the why I needed to know. And then what I needed to do, about systematizing my business. Now, it didn't give me really any help in the how, but I am really good at how. And I realized, all these years I had tried to put the manuals together and unsuccessful. And the reason why is because they kind of read like a law book, Article 1-.235 CX, it's just like I couldn't even decipher. It was so bad. And I also shared the story with Nathan, which was, so at age 25, we're a New York City union shop. There's an employer-employee, issue. We go to court, and I'm feeling pretty good. I got this big, like 300-page employer-employee manual. I walk in, sit in front of the judge. The judge looks at the manual, looks back at me, looks at the manual. He goes, has anybody ever read this thing? Does anybody understand it? Are you running any meetings? Is it written in plain English? And before I could even, he goes, case dismissed, you lose.
Yep.
And at 25, that was like a sledgehammer on my head, but it was a good one in that what I learned was that if the thing is not in plain English, if the manual is not, trained on and read on and part of your culture, it's not worth in those days the paper. And now, of course, today, the digital device that you're viewing it on. And so the other thing about employer-employee manual, and I was sharing with Nathan, is that when I was trained up, from Dale Carnegie and a lot of other training, I was told that I was not allowed to curse from all these 18 years that I've been out on the road in this second career. Now, as a New York City boy, to not curse is quite difficult. So I'm going to tell you what your employer manual is. First of all, it's maybe 1/10 of all the manuals you need to run your company systematically. But the employer-employee is a good thing to have if it's been read over by, whoever's going to represent you, whether it's a labor lawyer or an HR company or one of these, what they call PEOs. But the point of it, again, if it's not in plain English, if you're not reading it, isn't worthwhile. It's what I call a good CYA. And I'm going to say it slowly. It's a cover your anatomy because it's really helpful, but it doesn't help you run your business. It doesn't help you run your business. And that is a really big, strong sticking point.
Well, so it sounds like you're saying that an employer-employee manual is almost more, the employer-employee manual is almost more of the agreement between the employer and the employee. And then what's the rest of what's inside of that is needs to be more clear, like SOPs, standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
But you're also saying that standard operating procedure, so there's something unique there. And I'm hoping you can unpack this for us a little bit, because you said you literally called it a sledgehammer to your head, right? You got so granular, so detailed that it actually hurt you. I mean, like in court, right? Like you took it to someone who sort of knew better and then went, I know how real people are, and this is useless. This is a joke. So now that you've had that experience and come from there, you've said, one, the employer-employee agreement needs to be simple and agreed to by both parties. That's critical. But also, it sounds like you're saying that SOPs, standard operating procedures, they are critical, but they need to be written a certain way. Unpack that for us.
Yeah, so I'm going to back up even a little bit further, because what needs to be understood is that just writing manuals, until you have the right kind of box org chart, and it's what I call the boxes it takes to run your company. Writing manuals is really close to worthless, in my opinion, because the very first thing you need to know is boxes. Now, again, I was not born enlightened, and neither were my brothers and my dad. And so came a time, and again, this is all probably back in the 90s, and Marty is the financial guy I mentioned, and he's in the office like, I don't know, 6:15 in the morning, and he happens to get a call from an angry customer who had a service call the night before. And he goes across the hall and he starts ripping into the service manager, to the point that when I show up at 6:30, my first job of the day now is to walk the service manager off the roof before he jumps. You get in the picture? And so turn the page, another day or so goes by. I'm at the desk, dispatch, trying to get the day organized. And a phone call comes in, and it's from one of our vendors. Now, you need to know the story here is that my dad raised myself and my brothers that you don't get paid until all of the vendors get paid. Oh. Because when push comes to shove, those vendors will take care of you. Now, my father was brilliant, because when Hurricane Sandy hit Long Island, my brothers were taken care of. First, second, and third. It was the right thing to do anyway. Anyway, so he says, "Oh, I know you overlooked it. Could you fit it in?" And I'm just trying to be nice, because my blood is boiling. Yep. Hang up the phone. I tear across the office and I find the accounts payable person and I rip into them. And now Marty's job is to go get the accounts payable guy off the roof before they jump. So we're standing in the hallway, nose to nose. And I look at him and I go, "You don't like the way the service department is running? You tell me and I'll fix it." And he looks at me and he goes, "You don't like the way the bills get paid? You come to me and I'll get it fixed." And we stop for a second and go, "Hey, we should really write this down."
That's a cocktail party joke. That's like,
yeah. Well, again, what I always like to say is all of this, everything I'm going to share with you, is way funnier today than it was back then.
Oh man, I can imagine, right? You guys are just angry at each other. You're you're ready, right? You're so ready. And then, wait a minute.
Yeah. And so that was the first time we ever created an org chart. The boxes without the fancy titles. So there's no CEO, CIO, CTO, CFO, all the alphabet soup. It was, marketing manager, financial manager, warehouse manager, fleet manager, service manager, the sales manager who was in charge of the install wing. Those were all the boxes we had to do. But we really thought of our org chart as if you were building a pyramid. Now, the bigger, stronger your pyramid means the bottom blocks are really good. So apprentices who are becoming junior techs, who become senior techs, who become field supervisors, and then they can move on to either the big ticket sales department or they can go run a spoke, which in our case, we had one main shop and 3 spokes, because Long Island was named aptly. It's 115 miles tip to tip in New York traffic. And so this really makes a big time. There's a lot that goes into this program and how you do that. But I was sharing with another podcaster, these guys are in the cleaning business, and I was sharing with them one day. I says, if you don't have your systems rock tight, you couldn't move your company across the street. Yeah. The company couldn't operate across the street. And they're laughing hysterically. And I go, "What's so funny?" He goes, well, me and my partner, we bought the office right next door, and it was like two worlds apart. Because
they literally couldn't run their office across the street.
Not even across the street is what they were trying to do. We couldn't run it in the next store building. We couldn't run it the same way without systems. And really where it begins is this box org chart, which I shared with Nathan so that he could share it with you. But for 18 years now, I have used it with all types of contracting, whether you're a cabinetry, roofing, garage door business. I've done it with a condo builder in Montreal. I actually did it with a photographer, and we just felt anybody who has to answer a phone, sends dispatch, and have somebody go out there needs this basic box org chart. That's what. And by the way, I've worked as small a company as up in Redding, California. He's 60 years old at the time when we started, and it was him and me at his dining room table. And the next room was his wife, who was the bookkeeper, playing with the grandchildren. Out in the garage was the dispatcher, and they had one tech on the road. By the way, today he's a monster company in 2 different locations within the chimney and venting business, which is a nice success story, but that's what it's worked with. And I've worked with shops that are, have multiple locations in multiple states that have hundreds of employees, and they're all working off that first most important thing, which is the box org chart. Then if you think of the box org chart as a bingo board, your goal and the way that you get control of your company is to have a manual for each of those boxes. Mm-hmm. Now, the one that I always like, I think is one of the ones that trip up. The next question, usually, Nathan, I'm just going to do your role here. I'm going to ask myself my own question.
Yeah. Well, if you already know it's coming, in my head, I'm like, okay, so the next thing to know then is...
Okay, I'm an owner. What job boxes can I never give away?
Yep.
And the answer is there's 2 boxes. And this is not just me. My really great friend and co-consultant through the years has been Ellen Rohr. And Ellen Rohr, we were also partners in a Zoom training franchise, is we both believe that you can, as an owner, can never leave the financial manager role. It is your money. You need to know that what you're looking at and those numbers can be trusted and that they're generated on time. And now you don't have to do any of the financial stuff, but you have to make sure everybody on that team, the accounts receivable, accounts payable, HR, credit, the office manager, they're all getting you what you need to have in a time that you can trust it. Learn how to do budgeting. You do need to know that the certain KPIs, key performance indicators, are being hit, and you need to know it in real time.
Would you say
Ellen has a great line about that, which is, if you're relying on your accountant to send you reports, there's a danger in that because, first of all, they're too late. So you're driving your financial car by looking out your rear window.
Yes.
Whereas if you can do budgeting in real time, you're looking out the front window. And that is what makes a world of difference.
One of the things so are you familiar at all with the EOS or the traction system?
I've heard of both.
Okay. So it talks a lot about the stuff that you're talking about. And I would consider myself pretty familiar. One of the things that it talks about, so it calls them accountability charts, right? It scraps that sort of old org chart. Sounds so corporate. We're used to thinking of it like corporate. And you've said, like, do this box chart. One of the things it asks you to do, and it sounds like you're holding to this, and again, towards that standard operating procedure and how it might be different from other approaches, is that you're saying, hey, you're not making an operating procedure for the people. You're making an operating procedure for the box and the roles in the box.
That is perfect. I'll put a $20 bill in the mail. Yeah, that you really couldn't have, because it brings back another thing, which was there were multiple conversations that put us on the path. And one day I just walked in and told my brothers, I said, so after we got about the hostages, every day we ask great people that are here to overcome broken systems or no systems. I've got an idea. How about if we just have some good objective, documented policies and procedures, and let's see how far they can go. And to the credit of my dad and my two older brothers, they bought in. Now, be aware, I spent 1 year while I was working, sitting in every one of those boxes, tabulating the tasks that they do 80% of the time, not the 100 weird, 80% of what goes on. Because if you can handle the 80, the 20 isn't what trips you up. But you remember the one time that this happened, and it's never going to happen to me again. Forget it. And you can say, what's the difference, Al? It's digital. It doesn't matter how big it is. Well, if you're training on it, and if you're not training on it, it's worthless. The more you put in that isn't really useful information, it drains off the effectiveness of the manuals. That's
one of
really
the questions that I would have around, well, so I think you've hit on something really significant. First of all, you're talking about the what's called the Pareto principle, I think, which is basically, right, focus the 20% of your efforts you can give to the 80% that brings results. Or 20% of your efforts go into 80% of your results. Yeah. And so what you want to document then, and it sounds like this would tie back to that gigantic manual you had maybe originally documented everything, but the value is, first of all, you're not documenting for the person, because people are inevitably going to make mistakes. This, no matter what you do, they're going to forget something, even if you've written it down. But having documented processes for that box and the roles in the box, and documenting the 20% of the most critical things that box needs to be fulfilling every day, means that most of the effort behind that, you're gonna end up guiding almost all of that person's work to generating all of the results.
Yeah, it's when you have the box, the goal of the manual is to cover the 80% of the tasks that go on within that box.
Okay.
Now, here's the key thing is, it's not like I don't care about people. They're not robots. They're not, I do care. We care a lot about people. And I think right now, the problem that I've always run into is you, the owner, are being unfair to the people that work to you, because you base your opinions on them, good or bad, on your opinions. Like they could read your mind. So we were doing by the way, we spent $150,000 back in 1990, today's money, to put together what I would consider a fraction of the manuals of what I do today in my program. Mm-hmm. But they were so profound and such a big company shift for us that we paid it off in 2 years, because callbacks went down.
Yes. Insurance
claims were less or pretty much gone. And we could put more trucks on the road. We could maximize every call that a CSR goes. So there's my first tie-in back to the marketing.
Yes.
So I want to talk about that for just 1 second, and we'll drive back to it. Think of what a great marketing company, or you as a great marketer, can do. Your whole goal is to fill up a bathtub. For you plumbers out there will understand, is marketing is to put the right amount of calls at the right time from the right customer. That's your goal. The problem is the CSRs you have suck. And so there's a drain wide open. And most of us will blame everybody other than ourselves. And so, well, they should just figure it out. They should know what they're doing. No, they won't. It's really very difficult day. So one of the stories that I like to always share about, why would your employees want or care about these manuals? Well, again, the New York City union shop. So one day, one of my many jobs, I was an install manager as part of my day. And I had there were 5 crews to run. And this is back in the days of paper. I slide the sliding window open and I hand the instructions out to Bobby. Now, Bobby was a guy I found flipping pizzas. And between our training, we got him up to be one of our top installers. And I said, Bobby, go ahead and read this over. and tell me, what do you need? He goes, I'm looking at it, Al. It's not a problem. I said, well, one thing to know, Bobby, is I won't be able to get to the job at 10 a.m. like I usually do. I've got some other stuff. I'll be there at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, I arrive at the job, and I'm walking around the basement and looking at what's going on. And I am muttering every 4-letter word under my breath so the customer can't hear it. I grabbed Bobby and I said, come outside to the truck. And I said to him, when we get outside, I go, this is nothing like what I wanted. He goes, well, your brother Richie showed up and said, do it this way. And I said to myself, for the first time, we never had a way of doing our work. We never defined it in writing. And so when Bobby and I began to speak, because it was in this awful moment, was also the best moment.
Yeah.
And he and I are talking, and what he says to me, Al, I used to think that you lay awake at night trying to figure out how to ruin my day. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, Bobby, that's when I'm sleeping. I'm thinking the same thing. How are you going to ruin my day? And both of us realized that unless we have a good game to play, we're going to spend our time ruining each other's day. Now, who gets caught up in this is this poor customer.
Yes.
So it doesn't serve the customer right, doesn't serve the company, and it doesn't serve the employee. So move ahead. It's time to roll out the manuals. And Bobby tells everybody at the shop, do what's in the book, you're off the hook.
Yeah.
Finally, you had this objective thing here. And so we get in front of the union negotiator and we say, the manuals have to be part of that because there's metrics involved. This is how they move up the ladder, how they climb the org chart. And the union guy, the big rep, goes, no way. And the 7 delegates go, oh, yeah, it's going in.
Well, okay. So towards that, something that I know, I spent 5 years doing, I was in the bricklayers union. Every time I say that, I feel a little silly. This was a deal that happened in the union all the time too, but I was in terrazzo installation, concrete and terrazzo installation and maintenance. So I'm working with flooring all the time. And so I can tell you just from my personal experience, right? Spending 5 years, I'm grinding, I'm laying, whatever, flooring. And there are some guys who are like, look, I'm the guy who knows, right? I know. I don't need the manual. I could write the manual, right? And maybe they did. I don't know. But so what I know is 2 things though. That guy knew until, and then something happens. And the manual needs to change, and so does that guy. Well, so how do you so first of all, you have to make the SOPs small enough that people can train on them, because that guy at some point has to be willing to reread the manual. And then the other question I have is, so 2-parter, how do you make it so that the SOPs can be agile enough to be changed?
Well, there's a lot wrapped up in that. I had a lot of guys who wouldn't give up the knowledge. They would not share because they thought that was their job security. And what I would do with them is say, you see this box and where you are? This is as far as you're going. Would you like to be so I'll use your analogy. Do you want to be on your hands and knees for the rest of your life till you're an 80-year-old guy? I think not. Because if that's the case, you can help run some crews. But you're never going to get that until you help me write these procedures. Now, the manuals, and for all of these trades, there's nothing really longer than a page. It's not like, oh, I never did terrazzo. Here's the book. Go get them. It's not like I never did plumbing. Here's the manual. Go get them. That's not how this works.
No.
Works is if I sent 100 plumbers in 100 different directions, an hour from my shop, and they all go to a toilet reset, what's the chances they could all do a toilet reset the same way? And the answer is, if you don't have it written, 0 or none.
0%.
So that's really why it's the goal is to get consistent performance. Now, later on, talking about staffing is, yes, if you tie the manuals to training curriculum, have a training center, which is what we did for every trade, plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical. As we expanded from trade, that's what we really focused on. Now, in the job security one, I'll use the guy that knew everything and doesn't want to give it up. So as I'm putting the manuals together, I'm going from desk to desk to desk. I end up at my operations manager, Mark, And I'm asking a question about, terminal operations and some other stuff. And he goes, it depends. Ask another question. He goes, well, it depends. So finally, I just put down my pen and I looked at him and I go, here's what I'm getting. You don't want to give me this information because you think that's where your job security lies. But here's the problem. God forbid you're crossing the street, get hit by a bus, bad for you, but bad for me. And if that's the case and you're going to leave, you might as well leave now. I'll figure it out. Or you can stay here and write the manual with me and make your own life better. So when you're on vacation, you're not getting bothered. You can get your life back. And this is not your job security. You don't get empowered or paid for what you know. You get paid for how many people you empower, and we end up with better, more success, and more profit. That's how you get paid.
Well, and
then he came on board.
I think I need to write down what you just said. I know I have the episode recorded, but what you just said is not something just that you need to tell your people within the company, but it's something we need to embody as business owners and business leaders in general, right? What you just said is, I'm not getting paid for what I know. I'm getting paid for what I'm empowering the people who work for me and with me to know and be able to do. That's true top down. And if I don't buy into that at the top, they're definitely not going to buy into that below me, right? And so my company's going to grow, my company's going to get bigger if I buy into that. And standard operating procedures, writing processes, and getting my guys bought into that concept, because I am, is going to be critical. I have this question too. So I'm a marketing guy, and I want to talk a little bit more about marketing.
Yeah, I do want to, because there's that second one that we haven't told them about yet. You as Mr. Owner cannot, Miss Owner cannot leave.
Well, so, and I want to, because I think this is going to play into that. But you mentioned one thing about in the financial seat, if your accountant is just creating reports, you're always looking backwards. So one thing I talk to people about is scorecarding, and scorecards have to be a set of forward-looking measurables. And that's really hard. But something that a forward-looking measurable, you said, so I'm thinking an implication here. My brain works a little bit like a flow chart. So you go, okay, we write the manuals, and the employees have to be trained on the manuals. And what we found was, if all the employees had manuals that they were trained on, our problems started going away, like the amount of times we had customer callbacks or the amount of times, right? So those started going down. In my head, I go, wait a minute. What you just said is employees consistently trained on manuals is a leading indicator of how many customer problems I'm going to have soon.
Oh, it's going to, part of the thing is, I promise that if you do it right, callbacks are going to go down. Now you have to measure your callbacks.
Right.
And statistically, when people begin to measure callbacks, I usually tell them, if they're not measuring, figure about 4%. So if I ran 100 calls, 4 are coming back for some reason. Some are out of my control. The material is bad, or the parts bad, or a bunch of different things. Now, a definition, which I define out in the manuals as callbacks, it used to be in the good old days where you just went to work and you didn't even give them the price, and then the office sent them a bill. Those days have usually sailed by now.
Right.
You have to make a presentation, you have to get the customer to agree to something, and then you do the work, and then you pick up the money before you leave, especially in residential. And so it's really changed the dynamics. So to me, a callback in that service scenario is, if a customer calls back and a CSR, whoever answers the call, to complain in any time for any reason in the first 30 days, all it is a potential callback that gets kicked upstairs to the service manager, who digs a little deeper. So for instance, I went to Nathan's house. He's got a 30-year-old water heater. And I go, Nathan, there's really much I can do here anymore. Nothing we can warranty, nothing we can do. He goes, you know what, just change the draw off. Change the draw off. And tomorrow Nathan calls up and it's not working. So whoever would just think, well, that's a callback on Al. Well, no, it's not. The service manager is going to go, Al said he told you about the 30-year-old heater. Are you ready to change it? So that's why it's called a potential callback. But there's a consequence to your action. And in great selling companies that I've worked for, I said, if you just want to have great guys who can sell, be aware they're going to set fires everywhere. And eventually that's going to ruin your reputation.
Well, so then we're talking about CSRs a lot, obviously, and also how that inevitably plays in. And now you're starting to talk about selling. And it sounds like the other seat, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the other seat that you can never totally give up is this marketing seat.
As the marketing manager, yes. You can never leave the marketing manager. Now, clients that I've worked with through the years go, well, wait a second, I'm not a creative talent. I don't really know about that. And I go, you don't have to. What you need to know is you want to be a $10 million company. You break down how many, you know what your average ticket is, the rest of the stuff. And then you work back to how many service leads you need over so much time. You work out how many big ticket, qualified good leads you need over so much time. And that is really what you set up with your marketing company or your outside vendors or anything else. To make it simple, is your goal is to make sure that the right amount of calls from the right customers are happening at the right time. And it's the 3 rights of marketing. Now that takes a marketing manager manual, but it also takes a marketing manual, a plan in writing. And then that plan is a lot of things about who's your ideal customer, who's your target market, where's your target audience, where are you going, how are you measuring the ROIs? Because there's all different ROIs. Some are very low ROIs, but they generate huge dollars. Some are very high ROIs and generate small dollars. So you'd like a mix of that. And one of the things I talk about is marketing allocation or drivers. I like to focus on 3 marketing drivers. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do more than 3. I do advocate it. But what are the 3 biggest marketing drivers that are going to fill what I said? Right amount of calls from the right customer, right time. And that is in your marketing manual. And that is what you're making sure your whole team is driving for, both the inside team and if you're using an outside team, and driving on those metrics frequently enough to make sure, because you could do everything. You could have the best manuals in the world. You could have the best guys trained in the world. And I hope you do. But if the phone doesn't ring, you're going out of business. It's just that simple. So that's why we insist on the owner is always filling the financial manager and the marketing manager. Now, one of the quirky things you'll see in our thing here is the CSR, the person who answers the phone, or what I like to call the happy hostess in the restaurant, makes you feel good that you came to the right place and sets the expectations. They report directly to the marketing manager because marketing managers work extraordinarily hard. We need to know the lead source tracking. Now, software today does a phenomenal job. That said, there's still things that have to be accounted for. And we have to monitor the phone calls and the training. Now, if you have a CSR manual like I have, the 3 most important manuals, I mean, I have 31 manuals that are available in this All Access program. But the 3 most important manuals and the one that fixes companies first, because contracting companies that I've worked with over the years, where they're broken most, is they pluck manuals from outer space.
Yep.
And they don't fit together. They're not integrated. They're not your culture. They're nothing. So the idea is that to have an integrated manual for the CSR, who's under the marketing one, who answers the phone, happy hostess, captures the all information, builds sales momentum, makes the customer feel good, that the problem's going to go away, and then hands it off to the dispatcher. And the dispatcher, service manager working together to figure out how to maximize the billable hours, working with an objective priority that I have in the manual about how do we, it's not my opinion about what the priorities, we all have the same opinion. How do we prioritize and how do we maximize the day? Getting all the information to the tech. The tech has a manual that tells them what they need to know from the time they woke up to the time they go to bed, other than turning their wrenches and screwdrivers.
Right.
And then the tech has to close the gap, get all the information back to the dispatcher, because there's nothing more frustrating to a customer is they were here, they told me they were going to start, and nothing's happened. The loop fell out. Or they were supposed to call and make a code request or whatever. Happens all the time. So the triangular communication, and one of the things is whenever you change something in any one of those 3, you have to go look at what it changes to the other 2.
The implication. Right. If you make a change, it implies something else is going to become different now this is going to tweak something else down the line. So you can't just make a change and think you're like solving a problem. There's always some implication, like you're going to make a change and then Bobby's day is going to somehow get affected later on. And so you have to think about it when you're making the changes. Would you say then, I mean, you said this, CSRs are in the marketing role. I mean, like it sounds like you're literally
they're
saying
in the marketing wing. So right under that box is the marketing manager. Right below it is where the CSRs. Now, if you're a huge company, the CSRs go down, and there's a CSM, customer service manager, who sits in the pit and helps during the course of the day. And if you're getting bigger and you want a marketing assistant, you can continue to drop it down. But that wing exists that way, because if they're not tied together, you have an issue.
Well,
the dispatcher is off to a different wing.
I have this curiosity question. So obviously we specialize in local search, right? So local SEO is a thing that we do. And we talk about all the time, like, hey, there are all of these components that go in to making the phone ring. And you're saying something that we don't have to talk about anymore because you've already said it, which is, I can only make your phone ring though. Like you have to take it from there. And what that means, it sounds like, is if I have the ability to report back to you about how many calls went unanswered, that would be a really critical stat for you to have as a company who has hired a marketing company.
Essential. And then, of course, listening to the calls and see how many of them they kicked away.
Yes.
They just botched it. They're untrained. They asked wrong questions, quoted prices over the phone. There's a whole bunch of things. It really takes a specific manual like mine for CSR to good. And then, like, again, here's the manual, go home and read it. We don't do that. You get hired. First thing is orientation. And you and I are going to read the manual out loud. Then we're going to have you sit at the desk, and you're going to watch me answer a call, and you're going to read the manual. Then I'm going to have you sit at the desk, answer a call, following the manual, and I will watch. And then I'm going to walk away, get a cup of coffee, come back, and let's see how you did. And that applies to every position: accounts receivable, accounts payable, anybody in the office. That has to happen. Same thing with dispatching. The equivalent of that, of course, is the techs. If you're doing plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, roofing, kitchen cabinetry, every one of the trades that I've worked with, garage doors, is where would I make you show me that you can sell this, be operationally neat and clean, and do a technically expert job. So people love to go run and build a training center. And here's what I will tell you. If you don't have manuals, you just wasted your money because they're built all wrong. How do I know? Because my brothers and I built the training center with no manuals. They're out there in the field. A year or two later, Richie calls me up and says, hey, didn't you teach these guys motor rotation? I go, I did, but they've been out of class for 2 years.
Right.
So they go together. And also the manuals tell you what tasks they have to demonstrate in the training center in front of you. If you think about it this way, part of the thing that's always plagued the industry is there's a OTJT, which is on-the-job training.
Yeah.
So the only training we do is you're stuck at a job, and now I'm supposed to teach you what's going on. If you think about that, what does that mean? The customer is paying you to learn your job while you're supposed to be charging them to fix their problem.
Yep.
The chances of catching all of it is really close to none. So it's a bad way. Now, we did it for years, and I can tell you that added to the stress. But once you have manuals, once you have a training curriculum, once you have a hands-on active training center, and they're all coordinated together, then you can do what you can't do to this moment. You can find and fix the holes in your existing staff. And they all have holes. And here's what I'm going to tell you. They don't want to show it to you.
Yeah.
I was the second best tech at a shop of 25 techs. Family business. I would talk customers out of doing work that I was not comfortable with doing.
Yep.
I'm the boss's kid. Now think about your guys.
Yes.
So find the holes in your existing staff, and that goes for all of them, the AR, the AP, because everybody oversold themselves. The second is, who has not been in an interview with a bookkeeper and goes, so you know QuickBooks? Oh, yeah, I know everything about QuickBooks. Until you hire them and you find out, no, they don't. And even if they do, they don't know how to do it your way.
Yes.
So the idea is to find out in the hiring process what they do and don't know. So if you have a hands-on training center, if you have manuals, sit them down, you can find out what they do. Not that they're perfect, but you can fix their holes once you know what they are. So that's hiring experienced staff, finding the holes and fixing it. But the freedom, and the reason I could leave my company all those years ago, and guys that I've worked with could expand as big as they want, is because they learned how to hire willing people and provide skills. So that really opens up to the widest funnel possible.
So and you mentioned one of these companies earlier, right? You were talking about the guy who's in his kitchen and his wife is the bookkeeper and he's got his one tech. So let's say I'm a 5-person company. I've been running for 15 years already. I'm talking about my dad. And right, with my
Dad,
kids.
I hope you're not listening. He's saying it in a way that he loves you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And right, well, I'm thinking about it from 10 years ago when I was one of these guys, right? So he's got his sons working mostly, and then a couple other guys he's hired around town. It's been this way already for 10 years, whatever. There are no manuals. None of this stuff exists. He's listening to this and he's going, oh shit, I should probably do one of these things they're saying. Which one, right? Because frankly, it's overwhelming almost. Which one do I grab off the shelf of your 31 manuals, right? Which is the one I need to go get? And it sounds like you said you need the text to do what they need to do. You can't give up the money and you can't give up the marketing. So it sounds like those are the 3 most important. Can you put those in order for me?
You have to. It's the CSR, dispatcher, and tech. In the program, there's 23 video lessons because I'm not coming out to hang out with you.
Right, yeah.
Or I used to do that. So I'm virtually hanging out. I've been up the path here 1,000 times. I've climbed that mountain. I know every pitfall. I know where to rest. I know what you need to take. The goal for people who join the program is really, can you stay on my hip? So in other words, I'm at the top of the hill, don't be at the bottom. And as I'm climbing, don't race to the top because you're going to get up there the wrong way. And so there's step-by-step process for this. And I hate to say it's kind of like how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah, one bite at a time.
But I will tell you immediately, the CSR, dispatcher tech, those 3 key manuals that are integrated really makes the biggest difference. I don't care what type of work you do as a contractor. Really, don't care what you do. If you're doing service work in particular, that really makes a difference. And so those are the manuals that you need to know. Now, the place, believe it or not, to start is with the tech manual, because we have to have the tech who's out there in the field doing their stuff first. So we edit that, and then we compare it to the dispatcher manual. So the tech and the dispatcher manual are similar. But they're just read from a different perspective. So when you read the tech manual, you read it as if you're a tech. When you read the dispatcher manual, you read it as a dispatcher. And it tells them what each other is supposed to do, what they owe each other. So it's kind of a handshake. And so that really helps a lot. And so that's really actually, it's kind of funny if you're talking about the org chart was, at any company and anybody who's out there listening, here's what I bet. Your dispatcher thinks they're the boss of the techs. And the techs think they're the boss of the dispatcher. And here's what. They are both wrong. If the tech, so I'm a dispatcher and Nathan is a misbehaving tech, my job is not to yell at him. My job is to report this ongoing behavior to the service manager who brings the 3 of us together, because that's who ultimately is our reporting order. Right. So the box org chart that I was mentioning is really important for your employees for 4 good reasons. It shows me where I am at your company. You said you're going to give me a career, not a job. It shows me where I can go. It tells me who is my boss, because as I go around this office, everybody's yelling at me. Yeah. So who's my boss? And ultimately, who is I can go to for help? You mentioned something before. I don't want to forget about this, Nathan. You mentioned about top down. I am not a top-down management person. I actually hate it. And I work with a lot of great Nexstar shops, and that's how they're kind of, what do I have to do? What are my managers supposed to do? And I give them an answer right away that they really hate. And the answer is nothing. And you go, what? Well, let me explain. Nothing right now. Because the manager's first, second, and third job is to train everybody beneath them that has a manual how to fill their box, how to get ready to go to the next box, how to bring in new people. That's their first, second, and third job. When they have that handled, yes, we have more KPIs for the financial manager, marketing manager, fleet manager, for all the other top line things.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me. I want to, okay, so to crystallize, the answer is, what should I do first? Al, I'm overwhelmed. What should I do first? And the answer is, look, I will guide you on this. Sign up for the course. We start at point one.
And it sounds like a sales thing, which look at me or listen to my voice. I don't need your money. I haven't needed money since I left my job. Now I will take it. And not because it's for me.
Right.
You have to invest in yourself.
Yes.
By the way, the most expensive program is like $10,000, and it's got some support for me as well as virtual. It cost me $150,000, and mine was nothing compared to what you get today.
Right.
So it's kind of a no-brainer if you're at that size.
Right.
Especially what I usually use is if you're 2 million or more, all access makes a lot of sense. If you're a smaller company and it's more than you can do, you're welcome to start at basic, and then you can always upgrade later if you so desire.
This makes perfect sense.
You need all 31 manuals because some of them are trades you don't do, but you're going to need all the ones that cover the boxes. And when you, at the end, when you look at the thing, you will know more. Okay, throw that, everything I set out about, mine is, it's way easier to be an editor than a creator. There's nothing that says that you can't do what I did. I always say, I'm so glad there was no video.
Yeah.
I was putting this video, when I was putting this stuff together and I was running a service call, I would get in my truck and I would turn to the imaginary passenger in the passenger seat and go, okay, this is what I did on this call. And I would be writing down bullets as to what it was.
Yep.
You can do the same thing. If you get one page, I'm serious, one page for each of the boxes versus 0 pages, you're already on a good path.
Yeah.
There's much to know besides the words on a page or a digital device. You know, what you leave in and what you put in are two different things. So, for example, the example I like to give is for plumbers out there. If you go to a 60 apartment house, 4 stories, there's a tiny little gas leak in a stove behind on a gas stove on a gas line. You're not going to shut down that whole building to change that one little skinny line because you're going to be bleeding out this line forever. So if you want to know, I'm not going to put in the manual that says pull it on the fly because I can't say that.
Right.
So I'm just going to say, if you should encounter this situation, call your supervisor for help. And then the supervisor says, yeah, pull it on the fly. So that's part of it. There's also a lot of structure that's in here. Your team knows when you are yelling at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
The font all of a sudden goes to 24, or it's in all bold, or it's in caps, and it's in red. Because you remember one guy one time did something, or your bookkeeper didn't do something, and that caused the problem. And you're always cattail chasing this thing. And so that's not what this is. The tone of the manuals, it should be like my big brother, big sister coaching me.
Right.
That is how we tried to write it. And so as you put it out there, that really is what makes the difference.
Well, because it's not, and you just said this, you're not handing something down, you're building someone up. So you're not yelling down at someone, you're saying we're all on the same page here.
Yep.
That makes perfect sense. I have to ask these questions because it's a little bit self-interested, but I like to get really granular so that I'm interested in bringing the most value that I can to the home services. And one of the ways that I could do that, I knew, was to have this podcast and have guys like you on who know what they're talking about, because I'm like, okay, well, I'm running a marketing company, right? So, and I have to face this. And so I need to take a little time and get really open here, vulnerable with myself. But if this is a thing that I know is very common in the home services. So like I mentioned, we're like a local SEO shop, and we do web design and ads. And we're doing our work. A lot of this seems like a little science fiction-y or magic or whatever. And frankly, I mean, no lie, right? Like the home service industry the industries have a little bit of an issue with homeowners being like, oh yeah, who's going to screw me next, right? Like,
they watch shows like Catch a Contractor, right?
Right, exactly.
And by the way, that makes my blood boil, because they had the guy with the hoodie because it makes good TV. How about 10 companies who did the right thing?
Yeah.
Do they get equal time? They don't.
No, of course not.
That doesn't matter, because if you don't train, this speaks to this, is that if you don't train them in-house about that kind of thing, if you don't have them make the right recommendations, talk to the customer the right way, you could risk your whole company in the scenario that Nathan just uncovered here.
Right. So how do I, as a guy who's running this shop, who home services companies have gone, SEO guys, that's BS, right? Every single one of those is out to screw me. I've already been through 3. I've paid $1,000 a month, and I've paid $5,000 a month. I have no idea if I've ever actually gotten anywhere with this. Forget all of it. And I'm sitting here being like, I swear that the work that I'm doing is good. How do I actually prove that? What are you actually looking for? How should I hold myself accountable for you? How do I be not the guy in a hoodie? I mean, I'm literally in a hoodie, so that's a little embarrassing, but
ignore the man in the hoodie in this particular occasion.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of great marketing guys that I've worked with as well. And they are also like, well, what am I supposed to do? And most of them have in their contract now to help us as contractors not fall in this trap. We understand you're aggravated. It just seems like, fairy dust thrown around and some kind of magic happens. And so your job is to educate them the only way you can. Like the only way when I came to sell you a heating system or air conditioning or plumbing is on the front end. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. Here's the controls that I need to have in place to protect myself, but really you. So you need to see how often that phone rings off of that so that you have that benchmark. So you go, be aware, you got 1,000 calls. The thing is, they came in after 4 o'clock, and your inability to run or even want a call after 4 o'clock is the issue. Now, if you're ready to learn more and you're ready to want to do more and you want to, because I ran shifts 7 to 4, 10 to 7, 2 to 11, 5 to 2. I mean, I had the shifts out there. They weren't like on call. These were guys out there because I had learned long ago that, my ability to handle calls, and this is Frank Blau, the great guy in our industry 100 years ago, he and I drinking in a bar in Dallas said to me, Al, 40% of my profit comes from my ability to run the call after 4 o'clock the same way I would as if it was during the day.
Yep.
So that's what you need to do. That has to be set up. And of course, today with digital and phone tracking and your ability to hear their calls, there's so much more if they have good software, because they don't want to invest and feel like they're going to get burnt again. And I hear you as contractors. And we are not, how are we different than customers who have been burned with contractors who disappeared? We've got to put that aside a little bit, and we have to agree to the ground rules on the front end. That's the best thing that I can share for both Nathan and for you that are listening. Because what I was going to get to before when I talk about this marketing, because I'm so absorbed, it's what I love. But everything in my business stole me from being the marketing manager to a certain extent of doing everything I wanted. It was in the marketing manual. We constantly went through it. We had meetings that were constantly set up. We're always adjusting it, and basically we were lucky. We had more calls than we could humanly do in a day. Now, it feels frustrating. You don't want to disappoint anybody. But here's what I can assure you. if I can make your phone ring off the hook with the right customer, right time, you got to figure out how to get the techs on the road. And that was something I learned how to do way back. And that's what I've shown clients how to do to this day. So they can be handled. Will you ever have enough techs to go with your calls? Will you ever have enough calls? No. Now, I always talk about the 7 powers. There's planning power, operating power, staffing power, sales coaching, marketing power, and financial. So for those of you who can't remember the 7 that I just rattled off, I'm going to make it easy. You got 2 jobs, my friends. Make more calls, make more texts. Now, that will keep you busy for the rest of your life, because what I said about making calls doesn't mean anybody who's not my customer calling me anytime when I'm already crazy busy. And more text doesn't mean bodies in trucks. It means guys who have good communications, that leads to good sales. They're neat and clean and operationally professional. And whenever they went out to do, there's a good chance it's fixed. And that customer is happy, so happy, they're going to give me a testimonial, because I need their testimonials. What I learned years ago about why our marketing was so good is my friend, who was a really great, actually would help me with the manuals. He said to me, people kind of care what you say, but what they really want to hear is from somebody who looks like me. So if I'm a residential homeowner, I want to see a residential homeowner that looks like me. Big mistake. A lot of guys out there love the equipment, so they have pictures of all their equipment.
Right.
They don't know what they're looking at, and they don't care. What they do care is there's a happy, smiling people and go, we've never been warmer in our house. We have all the hot water we ever dreamed of. You know, the power of testimonials is enormous. Can you ever have enough? No.
Right.
You know, videos, pictures, and there's levels of trust. When you only write the initials, I kind of think, did you make them up? Or what's their full name? Is it in a town where I am? I want to do a micro marketing around that area, and I do. This person had roots in their drain. I bet all the rest of them around here, I'm going to do a marketing if these people give me permission to use them as the testimonial. That breaks it up. One big thing I wanted to kind of get to is the thing about marketing is a percentage of sales is your marketing budget. It is gasoline and fuel tank, right? Your trip.
Yeah.
Marketing allocation, pick 3 main drivers. Not the only driver, but the main drivers that you're going to put your time, energy, and money into. And here's where they all fall down. And I'm talking about great marketers. They have the power of a marketing calendar. The trick is to go backwards in your calendar. So if I'm going to put direct mail postcards out there as an example, I have to start when I want a customer to have had 3 touches in 6 weeks and work my way backwards. And spoiler alert, don't waste your time sending out a direct mail postcard, big one, unless you have a picture and testimonial from a customer.
Yep.
That's the only glue you need.
Yes. Well, okay. So clearly we can continue talking all day. That means, obviously, Al, that you have to come back, because you mentioned that there were 7 powers. We talked a lot about operations. We started to dig into marketing, and there's also sales. So next time we have to focus on marketing and sales, and you have to come back. That's the only obvious conclusion here.
I would be pleased and honored, because I figure you can fool people once. If you invite it back twice, okay, I'm in.
Well, awesome. I know that I already am going to have to re-listen to this episode. I always re-listen to the episodes because right now I'm so focused on the conversation that we're having that even though I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a key thing that I need to take. And so I actually re-listen to all the episodes and I pull the little nuggets out, and that's what we, try to post on social media and stuff. Are these things that you've said that I'm like, oh my God, I have to go back and I have to encapsulate that. But I'm going to have to listen to this one 2 more times because there's so much stuff in here that I know that I want to do. One of those things that I know I want to do, you mentioned this, making the org chart available to any organization that wants it. We know that we're going to push that out on our social media stuff. Is there anywhere else that somebody can go, or like, how do people find you specifically if they want to find you?
The best way to go is the number 7 Power Contractor, number 7 powercontractor.com. The website is really laid out, pretty well. I actually have some gifts there as well. If you sign up for the Jump Start Guide, there's some really good tools that I put in that toolbox, and it's free. Free is always nice.
Yeah.
And in the bottom of the page, there's a chat thing if you have some questions. And if this thing I was talking about, the operating manuals, you just go up into the product page and you'll be able to click down. If you want to see more detail and you're a bigger company, 2 million or more, then it's 7powercontractor.com/S as in Sam, O as in Oscar, M as in Mary, S as in Sam, AL, SOMSAL. And that will take you to the page where you can see every one of these manuals. You can see the org chart. You can read the testimonials. Because really, I know to this point, Nathan, where I have suffered as a contractor. My family, I can never get that time back. And I get choked up because, you know what? And I'm blessed, and I have been so. But I feel if you've gotten a gift, you're an obligation to give it back. Like I said, you will pay for it, but it's the best money you'll ever spend in your life if you're willing to give yourself and do the work. But it's the right work, and it's way less work than you. It's much easier to be an editor than it is to be a creator.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I wrote that down on a whiteboard while we were talking. It's so much easier to be an editor than to just be a creator. I was like, okay. And that's like the encapsulation of this podcast, right? Like, I just brought you on. I don't know. Like, Al knows. So I'm right. I got to live that out today. If somebody wants to find 7 Power Contractor Al on social media, it's Facebook or LinkedIn.
Facebook, LinkedIn. Yeah, we actually have some posts on Instagram, but that's where I hang out my time. That's how Nathan and I met, was on LinkedIn. But also on Facebook, there's Facebook groups. If you're a trade contractor, like there was Einstein, there's a bunch of good ones out there that I pop in periodically as well. And so, I put out, if you get up on my list that I was talking about at 7 Power Contract, sign up for the Jumpstart Guide. I have a monthly e-newsletter. I also do a podcast, but let me be really clear. It's not this kind of podcast. It's me reading my blogs and columns, because I've got hundreds of them.
Right.
And I recognize that, you know what, you guys are in your truck, most of you, or you're just busy. It's a whole lot easier to plug in your headphones and just listen to them. So anywhere out there, you'll find the 7 Power Contractor Radio podcast. And it's just, you love this lovely voice. You can have more of it.
Well, I mean, personally, I can vouch for it. I am now a subscriber, and I've listened to a couple, so I can confirm they are very valuable. Or at least I liked them. So if I don't know how much opinion I hold, but
I do appreciate it. But yeah, it's gotten great views and it's gotten great stuff. It was a wonderful suggestion that was made to me about, you know what, I'm stuck in my truck. What can you do for me?
Yep.
I don't have time to read your blogs. And I go, okay, I'll just record them.
Well, yeah. Al, it's been amazing having you on. Like I said, there's no question we're going to have you back. I want to dig into this further. I've already subscribed to your radio stuff myself. It's already been fantastic. I want to dig in further. We're going to be sharing the org chart on all of our stuff, but now you know where to go and you know how to find Al on your own. Al Levy. I just wanted you to correct me one more time.
It's all right. There's a podcaster in Australia. We've been doing this for 5 years, and he still says Levy. And the person who works with me wants to correct him, and I go, no, he's already branded me as Levy.
Yeah, that's right. Al, not Levy, it's Levi, has been the best. And that's it for the MLO podcast today. The home service leaders, we're signing out. We'll see you guys next time.